The substitution, the thing that we're doing today, I can't, as I think about all the different courses throughout all of high school, like this is something that is done over and over constantly, almost every single day, and every different type of math we're substituting in and evaluating. And again, it seems very simple. Like some of the questions we're going to look at are going to seem so easy, although when you introduce integers, it can be a bit trickier. But in this course, we will see it maybe very briefly, but in grade 10, you start substituting things other than numbers. You substitute other things. Today we're just substituting numbers, but you will eventually start substituting other things. And if you don't have a really good foundation of what substitution is, then you won't be able to do it. So again, there's something sort of subtle to what we're doing today that is really, really important and can help you if you think about the real pure thing of what we're doing of substituting. If you think about that today and do it the way that I encourage you to do it, I hope it'll help for sort of build the right foundation and get good habits for the future. So I think of it as kind of a three-step process. We're going to replace, in this case, all the variables with brackets, with an empty set of brackets. There might be other cases where you only do some variables and not others. I don't know, but in this case, it's going to be all of them. Then we'll complete the appropriate substitution, and then you're left with a BEDMAS question, and you just solve the BEDMAS question that's left. And again, this will come up when we do measurement. It'll come up when we look at linear relations. It'll come up when we do geometry even a little bit. Like all over the place, we will be substituting in order to solve. So this is something that, if anything, you really, really, really need to remember how to do it no matter what. Okay? Let's take a look at the first example. It says if A is 2, B is -3, C is -1, evaluate each of the following. So I'm going to leave a little bit of space because I'm going to write over top. I'm going to write 2 and look at how I put empty brackets, and then 3 and then empty brackets. You don't have to do it in this order. Once you get good, you'll probably substitute as you write it. But again, this is where I'm encouraging you. Try this once or twice doing this. Again, part of the reason is down the road, you're going to be asked to substitute something different. And you're going to be like, I don't know what that means. But you might go, Mr. Belair always said, I can take the thing I'm substituting for and put empty brackets and then write what I need to inside those brackets. And no matter what you're writing, it'll work and hopefully get you the right answer. So this is what I want to make a note of. This bracket came from A, right there, right? And this bracket came from B. By the way, when you see 2A, what does that mean? Multiplication. Nice, multiplication. It means 2 times A. That's what 2A means. And this means 2 times the bracket. We don't need to write it, but it's like there's a little multiplication symbol in there. And I think somebody mentioned this when I asked, and somebody said, we in high school in particular, we get more and more away from using x to mean times. We get lazy and we just put a number beside a bracket or a number beside a variable. And if I was doing things like 2xa, is that the variable x or is that a multiplication symbol? So we don't write it, we just write 2a. I also, when I do multiplication, I write my x's like this. And when I do a variable x, this is just my habit, but I do it like curved and sort of scripted like that. You'll notice a lot of people in math use curved x's for variables. We also use a dot sometimes, 2.3. It's not like 2.3, it's not a decimal. It's in the middle, and sometimes it's maybe a little bit more of like a circle or something. That means multiplication. If that ever pops up on a worksheet or something like that, that's what that means. Okay? So now what I do is I take the values for A and sub it into all the brackets that had A. So A was 2, so I'm putting a 2 in there. You don't have to do it in a different color. I'm just showing, I'm doing it to sort of show the process or the of how we did this. And this bracket came from B, so I go find the value for B and I put it in the bracket. So that's where the actual substitution happens. Then we go ahead and actually solve this, and we want to multiply before we add. So 2 times 2 is 4. Positive 3 times negative 3 is negative 9. And we talked about this on Friday. Well, wait a minute. You wrote minus 9. Shouldn't it be plus negative 9? And actually, it's the same thing, right? Because a positive and a negative makes a negative. But I would say you want to get in the habit of just writing it like this without 2 signs. When I multiplied here, I was adding 3 times negative 3, which is negative 9, so I end up subtracting 9. And that should work out to negative 5. Okay? If you don't use the brackets, I've seen people do this, where when they sub in here, and let's say it was positives or something, they let's say it's 2a, they just put 2, 2 and turn it into 22 or something like that. Now, they may have done that on purpose and just totally misunderstood, or they may have, at the time, remembered that it was supposed to be 2 times 2 and then forget and then treat it as a 22, but I've seen people do that. So be very careful. You got to have brackets around the second part, or if you didn't do it in this case, people might go 2, negative 3, negative 1, and think it's 2 minus 3 minus 1. How do I know this is wrong? Anybody have any idea on that? Yeah? Yeah, exactly. And this says multiply. It says 2 times B times C. And that doesn't. So you've changed it, right? That's not what it meant. That's not what it intended. It did not want you to do 2 minus 3 minus 1. It was supposed to be 2 times 3. Okay, so I'm going to do that. And again, this one came from B. This one came from C. So I put the appropriate values in those, and B is negative 3 and C is negative 1. And now it looks correct because I'm multiplying, and I preserve the fact that the question wanted me to multiply, and I'm still doing that. Okay. Again, as I said, I wouldn't know what order you did it. So you don't have to write empty brackets. Some people might do this: 2 bracket, negative 3 bracket, bracket minus 1. And you can do that eventually for sure. Whenever you're substituting, you can always go back to fundamental principles and just put empty brackets and think, what do I put in those brackets? Like, it's always a good trick to fall back on if you get yourself confused, if you're doing a question that's harder. One way or another, absolutely must show this step. So many of you will be able to do 2 times negative 3 in your head, and you might try to jump straight to equals negative 6 times negative 1 or something like that. No. When you substitute, you show the substitution step with no work done. Show the substitution. Then you can do the work. And this one is 2 times negative 3, which is negative 6 times negative 1, which is 6. Everybody already got 6? I'm sure you're way ahead of me in this stuff because I'm doing all the talking. All right, we only have a couple more. So there's also, I really like the habit of like 6, whenever you're doing this, you're kind of getting used to how we work down and rewrite the whole line every single time, just changing one little thing. So I put 6 empty brackets minus 6 empty brackets, and inside those brackets, A, which is 2, and B, which is negative 3. And this is where you can see it's a BEDMAS question because I have to multiply. before adding and subtracting. Go ahead and finish it. You don't need to wait for me. Don't just copy me. You can always, every question that we do, when you can at least try the next step. Some people don't want to make mistakes and they have to go back and erase it all, but I do want you trying these on your own, working ahead. You can scratch it out. You don't have to erase the whole thing and start again if you want, but 6 times 2 is 12. Negative 6 times negative 3 is positive, so that should be plus 18. 12 plus 18 is 30. Did we miss one, or are the letters wrong? The letters are wrong. A, B, C, E for some reason. Yeah, on Friday we talked about exponents. Again, this right away, there's already a situation that I can see people being more likely to make a mistake when you have exponents. So you can copy down that question, but I want you to put your pencil down and watch for a minute. Which one of these would I do? 2 bracket squared plus bracket squared, or 2 bracket squared plus bracket squared? So people sometimes put the 2 inside or sometimes put the 2 outside. So if I sub in, they would look like that. So a couple of questions. Which one's right? Does it matter? Are they the same thing? Are they different? What do you think?
When it's outside the equation, it applies to everything in. So that's how that works.
Yeah. So are they the same? Yeah, this is going to give me something different from that. This part will be the same, 2 squared to 2 squared. That's going to be the same no matter what, but these are going to be different. So they're definitely different. One's right and one's wrong. Which one, how do you know? And you can always fall back to what I said from the very beginning, hopefully, to determine which one is correct. Anybody want to guess? First one or second one? Must be Monday morning. Everybody's so quiet today. Oh my gosh. What do you think? The first one? How could you tell which one's correct? You're right. It is the first one. Because remember, the rule was replace the variable with a set of brackets. So instead of writing A, I write brackets, and then I write the rest. The 2 should be outside those brackets. Always, always, always. And then I could sub in A was 2 and B was negative 3. BEDMAS. People always think, oh, brackets first. But again, we talked about this on Friday. These are not BEDMAS brackets. Right? They were substitution brackets. There's nothing inside the brackets to do. So brackets are finished. Or brackets don't apply in this case. So I go to exponents. 2 squared is 4. Negative 3 all squared. Remember, that's going to be like negative 3 times negative 3. So I've got 2 negatives, and that's going to be positive 9. 2 times 4 is 8, plus 9, 17. Okay, I want you to try this next one on your own. Even if you're not sure, I want you to try. I want you to do something, even if it's just putting the first step. Go back and use another question as a model. Go look at the instructions if there were some. Try to put something. Often on a quiz or a test, you'll find yourself not sure how to start a question. So whenever you get stuck, that's an opportunity to practice. Well, again, people don't want to make a mistake, but you got to try. Like, that's what math is. You got to figure out what usually getting. If you know how to start it, you're also going to be able to figure out how to continue. So that first step is really important. All right, let's see how you've done. So check and see. If you got that first part right. So A is 2, B was -3, and C was -1. Good so far? So now I'm going to do exponents. So I'm going to leave the rest of it alone. Whoops. And remember what I said? I don't want to see this. -3 squared equals 9. You can't just write the parts that you're doing. That is not how we solve these questions. You've got to get in the right habits of writing it properly. So I write it like this. And -3 all squared, because the negative is inside the brackets, is 9. And this was multiplication, so this should still be multiplication. Again, some people might go, oh, it's +9. But I've changed it from being multiplication to adding. So you got to watch for that. There's all these little places that you can get tripped up. -1 to the 3. Again, what exactly does that mean? It means -1 times -1. Some people might have said 3. Whoops. Times -1. 3 negatives will be a negative. And 1 times 1 times 1? 1. Thank you. Whenever I'm multiplying, like if I'm doing a bunch of multiplying all together, I like to do it all at once. I don't do it in parts. Some people I know like to do it in parts. I would encourage you to try to do it more all together, especially when you're allowed to use your calculator later on. So I do 3 times 2 is 6. 6 times 9, 54. But if you wanted to show that, that's fine. Just make sure you don't make a mistake. And then -2 times -1 is +2. And this one was adding or subtracting, so it's still adding, subtracting. So that should be 56. Okay, try this one. Write it down. No, sorry, we'll do it together, but write it down. It says a ball is tossed off a 20-meter high bridge. The height of the ball in meters over time in seconds is modeled by the equation. And then it's got 3 different times that it wants us to find the height of the ball. So here you go. Here's an example of when you would use substitution. You're given a formula or an equation of some kind, and then you're going to use that formula to sub in values to solve for what's left or something along those lines. Lots of other formulas that we use, right? All the area, perimeter, and volume formulas. You've probably heard of Pythagorean theorem. It's a formula where you're subbing in and solving. And then we're going to have all other kinds of equations as well throughout this course. You don't have to rewrite the equation. If the equation is not written, then you do have to write it. But it's right there, so you wouldn't have to rewrite it. But if you're ever using an equation or a formula or something like that, you should state it before you use it. So is everybody ready to move on? So at 0 seconds, what exactly is it saying? What does that mean about the equation? This is kind of a hard question because it's got a specific answer. What do you think, Mary? Well, that might be the answer. Let's wait and figure it out. At 0 seconds, it's telling me at t equals 0, right? It's giving us the value of t. So that's important. It seems obvious, I think, probably. That's why maybe nobody really knew what I was asking for. But it turns out that it's important. Like, it's giving us the value of a variable, but it's giving it to us in words, in real language words. So I'm going to now sub t in. And you're right, 0 squared is 0. 0 times negative 4.9 is 0. 7 times 0 is 0. Plus 20, which is 20. Now, the question said it was a 20-meter tall, what was it, a bridge or something? Yeah, a 20-meter high bridge. So we kind of already knew at 0 seconds that it should be at 20. But we're supposed to be calculating it. Okay, go ahead and try B and C as well. Well, that's going to be hard for you to do in differential. I'll help you with the multiplication on the last because of that decimal. So I've done both substitutions. Does anybody know what that works out to? Yep. Yeah. Wait, it's 7 plus 20, so 27, but it's minus 4.9, right? So what's that going to give me? 27 minus 5 would be 22. It's almost 5. So it's going to work out to 22.1. And the next one, we're going to cheat and use a calculator. But you could do this part in your head. So 2 squared is 4. 7 times 2 is 14 plus 20. 4.9 times 4, so that's going to be a negative 19.6. And then that part we should be able to do in our head. And I should put units on all of these. And if this was a bit more of a real word problem question. We're not going to worry about it today, but you would also answer with words. In this case, I don't think you would, but often in a word problem, you would actually make sure you answer the question, so using words. After 2 seconds, the ball is 14.4 meters in the air.